Welcome in, everyone, to the Alabama Postgame Central Playoff Show, brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. Matt Scalisi joining me from AT&T Stadium in Dallas, Texas. Nice, beautiful backdrop there behind you, little Matty Ice. Looks good.
It's festive in here right now.
Very festive. Of course, Alabama defeating Cincinnati. The final score, 27-6. Alabama coming in as the 1 seed, Cincinnati, the 4 seed, Cincinnati, the first team to make it as a group of 5 contender. And Alabama handled business as usual. I just jump right into it. Give me your just overall thoughts, big picture of what you saw from this Alabama football team tonight.
Well, I'm gonna start my post-game analysis by tooting my own horn, Lauren, and talking about the fact that on our pregame show this morning, I picked for my key matchup in the game Alabama's rushing attack in this game. I thought that it was going to be an opportunity for them and a pretty important way for them to kind of take Cincinnati's biggest advantages out of this game. I think that was exactly the game plan, and they did a great job at it. I mean, an incredible job. Brian Robinson rushed for 204 yards in this game, which is a record for Alabama, for an Alabama running back in a bowl game. It is the best ground performance we've ever seen from this program, and there's a long history of great performances from running backs from Alabama. So pretty impressive night, not just for Brian Robinson, but for the entire offensive line at Alabama. I think they saw, I think, a clear advantage in size and power up front, and they were able to take advantage of it. I think there are probably some folks wondering why Alabama didn't run it more in this game, because when they did attempt to pass, largely they did struggle. I mean, that Cincinnati defense was all it was cracked up to be. I thought they did a great job really limiting Alabama's big plays tonight outside of that Ja'Cory Brooks long touchdown pass. But I think it was the ground game that got it done, and we saw after the game, Brian Robinson was the offensive player of the game, really well deserved.
Yeah, and I think you just kind of look at the narrative of the season, talking about this Alabama offense. And I think heading into the second half, we saw much more of that. But, they entered this game, ranked kind of in the back half of the FBS in rushing offense. And so I think that was one thing that maybe has been criticized of this Alabama football team, some inconsistencies throughout the year in the way they rushed the football. And we saw earlier in the year, kind of that old school ground and pound way of football for Alabama and how they responded, I guess, after the Texas A&M lost. And then, in some ways kind of got away from it a little bit. But then, of course, Brian Robinson, worth mentioning, he's been banged up. He hasn't been healthy. And you get him back and you just absolutely destroy it. 204 yards, as you mentioned, on 26 carries. That is a school bowl record for Brian Robinson. Of course, the poor guy on the sidelines throughout the game, as I'm sure you saw there at the stadium, getting oxygen throughout the game, trying to catch his breath, trying to get, back up to speed. I'd be curious to know what your thoughts were on that, if that had to be do with something in terms of him just, the fact that he hasn't been able to be fully healthy and play at such a high level. Was there any word on what the thoughts were of that oxygen for him?
No really additional information from in here about it. I think probably at least one element that could have been involved in it is the fact that it's actually pretty hot here in Dallas right now. It's humid in the building. It's been gray and muggy all day long. So, not the best conditions for that to begin with. But I do think Brian Robinson overall, the fact that he was still running like he was running in the fourth quarter, to me, shows this guy has incredible perseverance. He's really healthy. He's in a good place. He's got, about 10 days now to get ready for what will be a very difficult game, and he will still need to play a big role in the national championship game, whoever Alabama's opponent is.
Yeah, no doubt. So obviously, continuing on the offensive side of the football, and then we'll flip over to the defense. Obviously, Heisman Trophy winner Bryce Young steps up, has a tremendous game, 421 yards, 3 touchdowns. I guess for that performance that he had, I want to make sure I have his stats right. 17 of 28, 181 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. I was looking at something previously there. But just to think, that he was able to kind of have that performance. They set the tone early in that opening drive, most certainly. And you saw a statistic, I did at least on the ESPN broadcast. I think 47 of 48 games that Alabama's played in with a score in the opening drive, they have won that football game. So that's obviously, in favor of Alabama. They set the tone. Obviously, Cincinnati still, came out, continued to push, continued to pressure Alabama, did not make it an easy task for them. This was certainly not an easy win for this Alabama football team, but really you saw things kind of shift there in the second half, that momentum shift, and those guys were able to kind of take care of business. So just, what you saw from Bryce Young, and I got to be honest, it's one thing, sitting there watching the game, this is just someone that is so poised and just so together. And it's as if like he's floating in the air at all times. Like there's just the emotion never changes for him, right? And then you see coming into the locker room, I know there was a video that was posted from ESPN as well of him kind of propping up the guys. He was standing there as they were going in the tunnel, high-fiving, kind of getting his guys going. So you see that sort of emotion from him. And then it's back out second half, back to business. Bryce Young, again, big, just a tremendous asset for this football team. Again, 17 of 28, 181 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did have the 1 interception tonight. But just your overall thoughts on how he managed this offense throughout the entire football game.
No, I thought it was not his best performance that we've seen this year. And it's funny to say that because he ends up with 3 touchdowns passing in this game. But not his most efficient night. I think he was a little bit more careless with the ball than we typically have seen him. When he got under pressure, he threw it in some bad situations. I think he was fortunate not to be picked more than once in this game. But, I think ultimately he did what the game plan was asking him to do in this game, which was largely just keep the defense honest, force them to have to still respect Jamison Williams. And I think we saw the tight ends really worked into things. I think we saw, Slade Bolden really playing a pretty key role. There were not going to be a lot of big passing plays in this game. That was just never how this game was going to play out. And I think what they needed Bryce Young to do was make just enough plays to back that defense off, keep them honest, give Brian Robinson the room he needed to make big plays on the ground. And he did his job. And the fact that Alabama can win a game this way. And look, there's a bunch of people in the comments, by the way, saying, I don't know what you guys are talking about, this being a tough game. This was an easy win for Alabama. It wasn't. Just because they led the whole game, it doesn't mean that this ever was. This game really was not put away until the fourth quarter. They had a lot of opportunities to put it away, but they could not finish on a number of drives. And I think some of that was to do with, not quite calling the right plays in the right situations, not committing to the things that were working during the game. I do think that this was a learning opportunity in some ways for this team. But ultimately, the fact that you can go out here and have your Heisman Trophy winning quarterback have an okay game, not a game he would have won the Heisman based off of, certainly, and still win going away at the end of the game, 27-6, with a 200-plus yard rushing performance. It shows how many different ways this Alabama team can beat you, and that's always been kind of the hallmark of championship teams for Nick Saban.
Yeah, definitely. All right, flipping to the defensive side of the football, I think it's kind of worth mentioning. I think Cincinnati certainly responding early, and I guess they had that drive into the red zone early, ended up having to settle for a field goal. And there were times where you saw a spark from Cincinnati. There was a time where you saw them driving. Okay, they're moving the football and maintaining their poise. And then I think, Alabama made some key adjustments. You saw Desmond Ridder under pressure several times. I think he ended up having 3 sacks on the day, and or 3 sacks in the first half, I should say. And then I just think that, Alabama's defense just continued to wear them down, continued to, get pressure behind Will Anderson and, guys like Christian Harris that were certainly, big for that. And looking at the final stats for Ridder, he ended up throwing for, I guess, 144 yards. He was 17 of 32, 144 yards, and ended up being sacked 6 times. So 3 in the first half, 3 in the second, and then them just being able to limit the ground game and the amount of pressure and the amount of opportunities that Alabama capitalized on, forcing those 3 and outs. And then, there were times though that you looked at field position for Cincinnati and thought, wow, they have an advantage here. And, it seemed like Alabama had the disadvantage a lot of times in the field position, and then would take advantage and drive down the field and do what they needed to do. So again, it was definitely, going off of what the commentary is here in the column, like you said, easy win. I thought it was a little bit more of an entertaining game than we've seen sometimes with these Alabama. If you look at the score of this game, you would think not very entertaining. To me, it was an entertaining game to watch. I thought there was some bright spots and some great things to see from both sides of the ball, from both football teams. But in the end, Alabama wore them down, especially there on defense. Just your take.
I totally agree. I think Alabama's defense, this was a spectacular performance from them, and really 2 in a row for them, coming off of the. I mean, I guess we could go back to the Iron Bowl too and say this is a defense that has started to find its footing and establish as being a lot more than just Will Anderson out there. I thought Phil Mathis had a great game. Was batting passes down at the line of scrimmage. Overall, the whole front, I thought, did a great job of getting pressure in that Cincinnati backfield. I think they really never felt like Desmond Ridder had time to sit back and pick apart the defense. They had 2 really long, sustained drives. One at their first drive of the game, and then again to start the second half. And those are areas where Alabama's defense has struggled in the past, because you're typically playing against a scripted drive where all the plays have been chosen in advance. And Alabama was able to hold them to field goals on both of those drives. That's a huge win, because we know with the explosiveness of this Alabama offense, an opponent is not going to beat them with field goals. And I think Alabama did a great job. I'm sure there's lots of people frustrated because they don't like to see long drives ever. But again, bending and not breaking is the name of the game in modern college football. Alabama ultimately didn't really even give up that many yards in this game. 218 total yards for Cincinnati, 74 on the ground, 144 in the air. That's a fantastic defensive performance from Alabama against an undefeated team. And I know we're all talking about the fact that they're the group of 5, but they beat everybody they played this year, including a ranked Notre Dame team. This is one of Alabama's best defensive performances of the past couple of years.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And again, just looking down the stat column there, third down efficiency, Alabama 5 of 13.
Look at this comment, Lauren. Look at this comment.
Which one? Oh, and Watt there. Matt cleans up. Now he does, doesn't he?
I don't look. I would have a jacket on right now, but it's hot in here.
Little stymie. I get it. I get it. That's very nice of you. Thanks for noticing. We won't mention that last comment there on the bottom. That's
you're banned. You're banned, Richie.
We'll move past that. Okay, so obviously, again, just statistically speaking, I think again you look at the total yardage and just the ground game certainly just jumps off the page. 301 yards for Alabama, just 74 for Cincinnati in total. And then of course, just overall, I think a solid performance. And this game has to give you confidence. So right now, as we're speaking, the other 2 teams in the college football playoff are duking it out now, Michigan and Georgia. So the winner of that team or winner of that game will certainly go on to play in the national championship game against Alabama. So that will be the plan. And I know, Matt, you got to log off here and start making plans for the national championship, because that's how it goes. It's a big scramble. Now we got to make plans, book hotels, book flights, get it going, come up with a game plan. So that's, of course, what we'll be doing. But again, Alabama winning this one 27-6. I think overall you have to have some confidence in this football team. So whoever they match up against, whether it is a rematch with Georgia and or a matchup with Michigan, I think it'll be a lot of fun. Before I let you go, I will say, not that you're playing favorites, but if you're going to pick one team over the other, who do you think matches up better with Alabama for a national championship?
I mean, I still have to say Georgia right now. I think that they are not going to look the same as they did in the SEC championship game. That doesn't necessarily mean I think they're going to beat Alabama, but I think they're going to have a different plan, and they're going to attack that game differently because it'll be a different situation. But Look, right now they're up 7-0 as we speak on Michigan. Michigan's about to get their first possession of the game. So we'll see. We'll see how the night goes. I think that this is going to be a hard-fought battle. I think these are two teams that both could give Alabama a really good game. This is not a perfect Alabama team, but they have been good enough to get to the national championship game, and it's remarkable. Doing it in the year after they lost some of the best players in the history of the program, a remarkable achievement. And we'll see if they've got one more game worth of magic in them to try and pull off back-to-back titles.
All right. Sounds good. Of course, we'll have more coverage for you throughout next week leading into the national championship game. I know I'll be sitting down with Mike McCoy as I always do to do a little head-to-head, get a little prediction show going on, see what his thoughts are from this game heading into that national championship game. Of course, we'll have all our coverage. I know you guys got boots on the ground. Lots of highlights and post-game press conferences and overall thoughts coming your way. So stay tuned, obviously, here on our social media channels, AL.com as well. Matt Scalisi, thank you so much for your time, your expertise, your energy and enthusiasm. We always love it. And thank you to everyone out there watching. We appreciate you. And, of course, we appreciate our sponsors, Medical Properties Trust. Happy New Year.
Medical Properties Trust, at the very heart of healthcare.